What if I told you that the real you, the most authentic, powerful, and whole version of yourself, is hidden beneath layers of masks, defenses, and societal conditioning? And what if the key to unlocking this true self lies in embracing the very parts of yourself you've been taught to reject? We're diving deep into the profound psychology of Carl Jung, exploring the shadow, the persona, and the journey to becoming who you were always meant to be. This isn't about self-improvement, it's about self-discovery. When we talk about seeing the true self, we're embarking on a journey as old as humanity itself. It's a journey that Carl Jung, the great psychologist and philosopher, dedicated much of his life to understanding. But what does it mean to see the true self? How can we even approach such a profound question? We live in an age of distraction, where the superficial dominates. Yet, somewhere deep within, there's a call, a whisper that urges us to look past the illusions and into the depths of who we truly are. Jung believed that the true self isn't something we see with our eyes, nor is it a concept we grasp intellectually. It's not a persona we wear or a role we play. Instead, it's the essence of our being, the core that lies beneath the layers of conditioning, fear, and pretense. But how do we begin this process of uncovering what's hidden? How do we embark on the journey of individuation, the process Jung described as becoming who we were always meant to be? To truly see your true self, you must first confront the parts of yourself that you do not wish to see. This isn't easy. Jung called this the shadow, the aspects of ourselves that we suppress, deny, or project onto others. The shadow isn't inherently evil, it's simply what we've disowned. It contains both our darkest fears and our hidden potential. To see the true self, we must first integrate the shadow, because the true self cannot exist in isolation from the whole. Let me ask you this: when was the last time you faced your shadow? When was the last time you allowed yourself to feel the full weight of your fears, your insecurities, your anger, or your pain? Share your thoughts in the comments. Confronting the shadow is a journey we're all on. Most of us spend our lives running from these feelings. We build walls, hoping to keep the darkness at bay. But in doing so, we also imprison the light. Jung taught us that the path to the true self is not a straight line, it's a spiral, a labyrinth. We must descend into the depths of our unconscious, into the parts we've buried and forgotten. This is not a journey for the faint of heart, it requires courage, the courage to face what we fear most, ourselves. But why should we do this? Why not stay on the surface, where life is easier? The answer is simple: because the surface is not enough. The surface is a mask, a facade. It is not real. And deep down, you know this. You feel it in the quiet moments, in the stillness, when the noise of the world fades away. You feel the emptiness, the longing for something more. That longing is the call of the true self. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But this privilege comes with responsibility. To see your true self, you must be willing to let go of who you think you are. You must be willing to shed the layers of false identity that have been imposed on you by society, by family, by culture. This is not an act of rebellion, it is an act of liberation. You might ask, how do I know who I truly am? The answer is not something I can give you, it's something you must discover for yourself. But I can tell you this: the true self is not something you find, it is something you uncover. It is already there, waiting. It is like a diamond buried beneath the dirt. The diamond has always been there, but it takes effort to remove the layers that conceal it. And so, we must begin the work of excavation. This work is deeply personal, but it is not solitary. Jung believed that the process of individuation requires relationship. We cannot see ourselves clearly without the mirror of another. But these relationships must be authentic, they must challenge us, provoke us, and hold space for us to explore our depths. But here's the paradox: to see your true self, you must first lose yourself. You must let go of the ego, the part of you that clings to control, certainty, and identity. The ego is not the enemy, it's a tool. But it is not the master of your soul. To see the true self, you must surrender to something greater than the ego. You must trust in the process, even when it feels like you're wandering in the dark. Jung often spoke of the self with a capital S, the archetype of wholeness. The self is not just your individual essence, it is the divine within you. It is the part of you that is connected to the collective unconscious, to the greater whole. To see your true self is to see this connection, it is to realize that you are not separate from the world, but an integral part of it. But how do we access this deeper connection? Jung believed that symbols and dreams are the language of the unconscious. They are the bridge between the ego and the self. Pay attention to your dreams, to the images and symbols that emerge. They are not random, they are messages from the depths, guiding you toward your true self. When was the last time you truly listened to your dreams? When was the last time you allowed yourself to be guided by intuition, by the whispers of your soul? Share your experiences in the comments, let's explore the language of the unconscious together. This journey is not about perfection. It is not about becoming something you are not. It is about remembering who you have always been. It is about reclaiming the parts of yourself that you have abandoned. It is about embracing your humanity, your light and your shadow, your joy and your pain. To see your true self is to see the world with new eyes. It is to find beauty in the mundane, meaning in the chaos, and purpose in the struggle. It is to live with authenticity, to act with integrity, and to love without fear. It is not an end point, it is a way of being. And so, I invite you to begin this journey. I invite you to look within, to confront your shadow, to embrace your wholeness. I invite you to see your true self, not as an abstract idea, but as a living, breathing reality. Now, what will you find when you dare to look? If we are to see our true self, we cannot shy away from the shadow. Carl Jung taught us that the shadow is not an adversary, but a necessary part of our wholeness. Yet, most people spend their lives avoiding it. Why? Because the shadow is uncomfortable. It holds everything we'd rather not admit about ourselves, our anger, our jealousy, our fears, our desires that don't align with the image we project. But these disowned parts don't disappear, they linger in the unconscious, influencing us in ways we don't realize. Think about this, how many of your reactions are truly yours, and how many are the echoes of something buried? A sharp comment stings more than it should. A minor inconvenience sets off an outsized frustration. Why? Because the shadow, when ignored, doesn't die, it festers, waiting for moments to erupt. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That's what the shadow does. It runs in the background, shaping your thoughts, actions, and relationships, all while you remain unaware. So, if we want to see the true self, we must bring the shadow into the light. This isn't about fighting it, it's about understanding it. But how? Start by noticing the patterns in your life. Pay attention to the things that trigger you, the things that make you uncomfortable. These are not random, they are clues, pointing you toward the parts you've disowned. For example, if you find yourself judging someone harshly, ask, what is it about them that bothers me so much? Often, what we judge in others is something we cannot accept in ourselves. The shadow loves to hide in projection. It's easier to see our flaws in someone else than to admit they belong to us. Recognizing a projection is like catching the shadow in the act, a moment of clarity, a chance to reclaim a lost part of yourself. Sometimes, the shadow shows up in our dreams. Jung believed that dreams are a direct line to the unconscious. They are not meaningless, they are rich with symbolism, with messages from the parts of ourselves we ignore. A recurring nightmare might be your shadow trying to get your attention. Are you listening? But let's not romanticize this. Facing the shadow is hard. It can be messy, even painful. It forces you to confront parts you've spent your life avoiding. You might feel guilt, shame, regret. And yet, something remarkable happens when you stop running. The shadow begins to shrink. Its power diminishes. It no longer needs to scream for attention, because you're finally listening. Here's the paradox: the shadow, when integrated, becomes a source of strength. The anger you suppress can transform into courage. The fear you hide can become wisdom. The parts you once rejected can become the very things that make you whole. But integration is not control. You don't dominate the shadow, you make peace with it. You acknowledge its existence and allow it to have a voice, but you do not let it take the wheel. It's like welcoming an old adversary to your table and realizing they were never really your enemy. What most people don't realize is that the shadow contains not only the parts we dislike, but also the parts we've forgotten to love. How much of your creativity, your spontaneity, your curiosity has been buried because someone told you it wasn't acceptable? How much of your true self has been hidden because it didn't fit the mold? When we repress those parts, we lose something essential. We become smaller, less vibrant, less alive. But when we integrate the shadow, we reclaim those lost pieces. We start to see ourselves in our fullness, not as perfect, but as complete. And this leads to an uncomfortable truth: the shadow will never go away entirely. Even when you've done the work, new aspects will emerge. This is part of being human. We are dynamic, ever-changing beings. The shadow is not a problem to be solved, but a relationship to be tended. Now, we'll explore the concept of light. If the shadow is what we hide, the light is what we aspire to. But the light can be blinding. Jung warned about identifying too much with our light, with our ideal self. He called this the persona. The persona serves a purpose, to help us navigate social settings. But when we mistake the persona for the self, we lose touch with our real selves. Think of people who take pride in being selfless and kind. But what if their kindness is driven by the fear of conflict? What if their selflessness is avoiding their own needs? The unexamined light can cast its own shadow. When you think about this, what part of yourself have you been hiding? Share it in the comments below. Seeing your true self means questioning your light and the roles you play. Are you truly the roles you play? Or have you performed it? This is uncomfortable, because if you are not the persona, and you are not the shadow, then who are you? You are whole, you are both the light and the shadow. This has implications on how we live. When we see the true self, you will stop being controlled. You stop needing to prove yourself, and you begin to act with authenticity and freedom. How much of your identity is tied up in roles that no longer serve you? Let me know in the comments. Wholeness is not perfection. It is about accepting every part of yourself. Jung said, "I'd rather be whole than good." Society rewards the mask and conformity. But it does not reward authenticity. To live authentically is an act of rebellion. It means being willing to challenge other people's expectations. But this means freedom, a freedom of not living for the approval of others. Seeing your true self means you cannot blame others, you take ownership of your life. It is about living in alignment with your inner truth, and being honest to yourself and others. Jung believed that the true self is something we uncover. It is already within us. But to see it, you must stop looking for validation outside of yourself. The more you accept your true self, the more you are connected to others. Because the true self is not separate, but expansive and interconnected. When you live from your true self, you stop needing to control or prove yourself. You find a deep and unshakable peace, the peace that comes from being real. This is wholeness. It is not about a destination, it is about being fully alive, and being fully human. And so, the journey to see your true self is not a quest for perfection, but an embrace of wholeness. It's about integrating the shadow, questioning the persona, and recognizing the self that lies beneath, the self that is both flawed and magnificent, both human and divine. It's a lifelong process, a continuous unfolding, a dance between light and shadow. But it's a journey worth taking. Because when you dare to look within, when you embrace all that you are, you find a freedom and a power that no external validation can ever provide. You become authentically you. So, I challenge you, what is one aspect of your shadow that you are ready to acknowledge and integrate today? What is one mask, one persona, that you are willing to let go of, even just for a moment? Share your commitment in the comments below. Let's support each other on this path of self-discovery and create a community of individuals who are courageously embracing their true selves. And, as always, if this video resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with those who might be ready to embark on this journey.